Now, we said we'd speak to various candidates. We've spoken to Daniel Lewkovitz before. He's the Liberal Democrat candidate for the lower house seat, the seat of Wentworth, where he is up against Dave Sharma and Allegra, spender by name, spender by nature, the electric vehicles lady. Daniel, welcome back to Outsiders. How are you?
Thank you very much. This is a very, very important election, and I'm really honoured to be standing up not just for billionaires, but for all of Australia. And it's a time where Australians have a choice, a real choice. Both major parties have become indistinguishable from each other, and I'm so proud to be part of a genuine third alternative that promises a future for this nation.
Rita?
Now, did I have one of those Nicholas Reese-style fever dreams, or did Allegra Spender, the teal in Wentworth, actually praise China this week for their climate response? Did that happen? Daniel?
Well, Chris Kenny, she wasn't returning Sky News' call, so he bailed her up on the doorstep of the polling place, and she was caught in the headlights. I mean, as Chris Kenny actually said, their policies of climate change were the most idiotic policy promise ever foisted on our political system. And it's going to make billionaires richer, but it's going to come at the expense of ordinary Australians. I mean, when Robert Menzies spoke at the start of the Liberal Party, or the so-called Liberal Party now, he spoke about the forgotten people. And there's an entire group of Australians who have been forgotten. And I just look at policies that are going to make billionaires wealthier and are going to cause the cost of everything else to go up in our life. I mean, we talk about cost of living, and we also talk about energy policies. I think if you look at the amount of money that's been spent on renewables in time and money over the last decade, we could have built 3 major nuclear plants by now. We're not even talking about nuclear. My party's committed to it. The other parties treat it like the N-word that they must never say. And all we've got to show for it now is billions gone into other people's pockets, including China, a whole bunch of dead birds, and the very real risk that we're going to lose any sort of energy independence and the lights are going to start going out. And I don't want a future like that for the forgotten people who are not only the ones who are out in Greater Australia, but we've also forgotten about our children and our grandchildren who are going to inherit such a national debt. They're going to be paying this off long after we're gone, and that's not good enough.
And Daniel, speaking of kids, I've often said repeatedly that the climate change alarmism being peddled by the likes of Allegra Spender and Dave Sharma, for that matter, is nothing less, in my opinion, than child abuse. The reason I say that is because our kids are terrified that they're going to die because of so-called climate change. You very brilliantly this week went along to one of those Climate for Kids demonstrations. I'm just going to play a little bit of the clip of you at that demonstration this week.
Okay, so this is a cause you care very deeply about?
Yes, it affects my future and my family's future.
Okay, and what do you think the future holds if we don't do anything?
I think we'll all die.
And if you could vote today, if I could wave a magic wand and you could vote today, who do you reckon you'd vote for and why?
Anyone who's against climate change. The Greens.
You'd vote for the Greens. How about you?
I'd vote for the Greens.
How about you?
Kanye West 2024.
He says Kanye West 2024.
Oh,
and another
one voice of sanity.
I don't know if that was the same kid, Daniel, but I love the kid who said, I'm just here for the Maccas, which was great. But it is a serious issue, Daniel, that you've highlighted. Our children are being terrified. I call that child abuse. If a parent or a teacher convinces a kid that they are going to die, they have no future because of something to do with a coal mine up in Queensland, that is child abuse. Daniel, what do you think?
Well, if people look at the whole of that clip, which is at Vote Luco on my social media, they'll see right at the end where I asked one of those same kids who could tell me everything about climate change, what's 9 times 4? And he got the answer wrong. You know, and it's really important to note that it's not those kids' fault at all, and I have no desire to embarrass them. It's the adults' fault. This has all the hallmarks of a religious cult following. It's not science, it's not academia, it's hurting children, and it's going to hurt all of Australians. But again, this is a message that's being pushed by people who stand to make a fortune, and that's why I'm standing up as a business owner, as a parent, as someone who cares about this whole nation, not just my investment portfolio, to make make a change. And these are changes that are going to mean lower power bills for Australians, lower taxes for Australians, because I don't want to grow up in a world where, you know, the population are dictated to by politicians. It should be the other way round. And that's the future that I want. And that's why I want to be a part of this system and not continue down the path that we're currently on, which is very, very scary indeed.
James.
So how are you finding the reception in Wentworth, where every other person, it seems, is the head of their own climate fund? You know, what you're saying is absolutely correct about so much of this stuff, but what sort of reception is the message getting in Wentworth?
Well, I'm under no delusion as to the battle I have ahead of me. And part of the reason for that is because, you know, I'm not funded by billionaires. I'm not funded by major business that wants to buy favours of me the way both the major parties are. So, you know, it's a real struggle. I feel almost like a guerrilla insurgent the way I've had to campaign here. So, but, you know, again, starting a movement takes time, and this is what I want to do. I've had a lot of people come up to me and, you know, they stop me in the street. They recognise me. I'm never going to be able to road rage again because of this. And, you know, they're very, very drawn to it. A lot of them are people who are very frustrated, traditional Liberal voters who didn't feel they had anywhere to park their vote. Now they actually have somewhere safe to park it. And these are people who are not being conned by so-called independents. You know, the Greens and the Labor Party are running completely dead in that seat. They haven't sent any talent there at all, which tells you everything you need to know about, you know, which side everybody sits on. So they're looking for an alternative, and I'm glad to provide them with one. But you know, one thing that I don't like is the idea that the person with the deepest pockets can just turn up out of nowhere and win elections in this country. I don't think that's very good. And I think, you know, some of what they're saying, I mean, you know, a mass SMS went out the other day saying, oh, nuclear takes over 20 years to build. I mean, that's just a lie. It's a myth. But they're spreading these myths with huge amount of money. It's basically advertising dollars with which they can convince people of anything that they want. You know, we could have so many nuclear plants already, you know, and this stuff is so cheap once it's up and running, but instead all we're doing is we're lining people's pockets, we're sending money over to China, we're creating massive landfill with solar waste, we're killing birds, and people are voting for this because they've been brainwashed, which is what you can do when you have a huge marketing budget. I don't. All I have is the truth, and it's important that people start to hear the truth and they realise that they can vote for someone who actually stands up for what's right and not just what's going to make money for their paymasters.
Daniel Lewkovitz, good luck next weekend. I'll also point out, because you won't, but I'll say it, you and Natalie Duma are the only two Jewish candidates in this largely Jewish electorate. Something for the voters of Wentworth to mull over. Daniel Lewkovitz, good luck.